Acknowledgements. This talk has been inspired by Dr. Yaron Brook's numerous talks on the morality of capitalism. Some of the examples used here were directly borrowed from his talks. Yaron Brook is the host of the Yaron Brook Show, and he's also the chairman of the board of directors of the Ayn Rand Institute, based in Anaheim, California, United States.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our guest lecture. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our guest speaker, Mr. Jiří Kinkor. He is an economist by profession. He spent a significant part of his career in management positions in corporate finance. He has been a student of philosophy for almost 30 years and recently completed a graduate philosophy program at the Ayn Rand University in California. He has translated and collaborated on translations of several books presenting Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism. He is currently active as a writer and publisher. He is an author of 2 books, Market and the State, and The Hayekian Road to Serfdom. And there are some books over there by the entrance. Most of them, I think, except for one, are for free. So please feel free to look at the materials, take some of them home, except for the one that's paid. He is the editor of Czech website and Facebook page presenting Ayn Rand's ideas to the public and commenting on current social, economic, and political issues. He was a speaker at the educational programs presenting Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism. Ladies and gentlemen, please give warm welcome to Mr. Jiří Kinkor.
Thank you. Thank you to the Anglo-American University for having me, for giving me the opportunity, and thank you to Mr. Šorek for organizing this event. So tonight we're going to try to answer the question that you see in the title of the talk. If any one of you could give me one word as an answer, you had just one shot, one word. Anyone shout at me just one word, and if not, I will continue. Why are we losing the battle for capitalism and freedom? One word. Just shout at me, whatever you think.
Populism?
Populism, okay. It's not that. The answer will be apparent. The answer will be apparent throughout the lecture. So anyway, thank you for the attempt. So I'm going to talk about ice hockey today. Well, you might think, why ice hockey? What is he doing here? Is he going to talk about competition? What does ice hockey have to do or in common with capitalism? It's not competition. The essence of capitalism is not competition. It is the important feature, byproduct, very important byproduct, but not the essence. So I used to play ice hockey, when I was young. There was a lot of ice in winter out there, outside. Now we have global warming, so I don't play ice hockey anymore, but I still came to appreciate something that is part of this, and that's the hockey stick. So I'm going to talk about hockey sticks today. Probably you know this. This picture, this is the GDP per capita, or we could view that as a history of human prosperity, human progress, right? This starts here from year 2000. We could go here, many meters. It would be flat all the time. So there was, of course, some kind of production, some kind of progress, minimal progress from generation to generation, basically. The progress was very, very small, next to nothing. So 3 generations after let's say, at the point of time, 1 generation, 3 generations after, pretty much nothing changed, right? And then all of a sudden, you have this spike, this extreme spike. What is it? It's somewhere around year 1800. It starts a little bit before. If you ask me for one particular year that I could give you that capitalism actually started as a political system, I would probably pick the date 1776. I'm sure you will know Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, that were, the book was published, major work by him was published in 1776. But something even much more important historically happened in 1776. What was it? What was it, 1776? Declaration of Independence. Founding fathers of the United States. Big intellectual movement in America, in American colony of the British Empire. They declared independence in 1776. That was officially start of some completely new country in the history. So if we should answer with one word what this spike is due to, what does it represent? What does it symbolize? It's capitalism. There are other hockey sticks that I very much like, and they're actually the result of capitalism, of markets starting to work. World population, the same thing. Next to nothing. Of course, there was some growth, minimal growth. It's in billions of people, right? Billions of people. Of course, there was some growth, but all of a sudden. Here, I guess it was something like 1 billion, somewhere here. Now we have how much? How many? 8 billion, right? In more than 200 years, 8 times. Here, almost nothing. Again, capitalism, result. Life expectancy doubled. Again, the same period after, 17-something, industrial revolution, capitalism. This is what happens, life expectancy. Extreme spike, rise. So in your age, you would be maybe in the second half of your life now, in this period. If we were in this period, let's say you are 20 or something, so you would be in the second part of your life, right? 25, 30, yeah. Extreme poverty and GDP per capita. It's a different hockey stick, but pretty much the same. It's Western Europe. Extreme poverty, down, steeply down. Literacy or illiteracy. This is literacy. Again, various countries, the United States, up there. I will be basically in these charts or what you've seen, basically speaking about the United States, because you can ask me in the Q&A period. By the way, there will be a Q&A period at the end of it. So if you can spare your questions to the end, I will have 60 minutes now, and then there will be 30 minutes for the Q&A. So you can ask me why I hold the United States as the country that was closest to capitalism back then. So that's why I'm keep referring to the United States. So of course we could go This is 1820. We could go here, here, there, and the literacy would be next to zero here, zero here, and then again. So it's all a result of prosperity, capitalism. Right, so we have this same phenomenon again, and take a little bit closer look at this. So here we are, around 1800, or a little bit before 1800. What happens? This is the green one. The green one is the United States. I don't know if you see the legend here, probably not. So this is the United States. Here are, China, whatever, India, Eastern Europe, yeah. So capitalism again, repeating. Here I'm no longer talking about capitalism. Here, let's say we're somewhere after the first third of the 20th century, so roughly 100 years ago, 1910, 1914, after the World War I, we can no longer talk about capitalism. You can ask me why. I will explain then, or in the meantime, the progress of the talk. So this is no longer capitalism. This is mixed economy. Some elements of capitalism, some elements of statism. State controls, regulations, huge spending. So we cannot talk about capitalism anymore here, even in the United States, let alone other countries. So this was all result of freedom. People had freedom. People had back then much more freedom than they have. Freedom to use their mind, to prosper, to produce. And what happened? Why did freedom all of a sudden sort of appeared? There was little freedom here. What caused it? What caused it? Reason. This period, roughly, is the period of starting with the Renaissance, 14th, 15th century, on and on and on, and sometime around 17th, 18th century, the climax of the Renaissance, age of reason, they call it, right? Religion goes to the background more and more and more, and reason comes to the foreground. So this is the age of reason. So reason was the reason, birth or rebirth of reason was the reason why freedom later on appeared. Of course, we could go back to ancient Greece. There was relatively much more reason back then, but then almost 1,000 years, nothing. Religion. Basically, Christianity, Islam, and some other religions in Asian cultures, but basically religion. Mysticism. So here it comes again, reason, come on, back on stage, please. So something happened here. Why did reason all of a sudden began to appear more? It was philosophical development. If you want me to name one person who was responsible for, of course there was many more people, but one dominant figure that brought reason to civilization back to European civilization, and then of course with Europe to the United States. It was Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas was still very, very religious, and what he tried to do was synthesize religion, faith with reason. Of course, he could not succeed. This is irreconcilable. But anyway, so this was the beginning of what happened here. It took many years, hundreds of years to develop into, free society, capitalism. So it looks like capitalism works, right? We had these sticks, hockey sticks. Everything, seems wonderful, unlimited progress, prosperity. People are much more happy. They don't live 30 years, but 60, and then 70, and then 80. So it looks all positive. Everything is wonderful, is it? Well, here are two classic examples. What happens if you don't have capitalism and you have something, well, let's say, opposite, called socialism? You have, this is really classic example, satellite image. You know what that is? Shout at me, anyone knows? Korea. Yeah. South Korea. At night, everything is wonderful. A lot of lights, electricity everywhere, people thriving. Prosperity, absolutely enormous. It's comparable to the Western Europe and United States, of course, roughly. And we could, of course, compare other countries, or not compare, but name countries where there was previously more socialism than more capitalism. Like, nowadays a lot of people are interested in Argentina, Milei, Milei and President Milei, his reforms. Argentina used to be one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America, and then they adopted socialism for 100 years, and now it's a country struggling with poverty, with almost economic collapse, inflation, 80% or something, absolutely crazy. Unemployment and education terrible, and the worst example you can find in many decades. Not that totalitarian as North Korea, but still very much socialist country. Used to be very wealthy. The same Venezuela. Or Chile. Chile was, after World War II, pretty socialist, and then turned to more capitalism, more elements of capitalism, resulting in a huge change in prosperity and everything went up. But if we look at the development in the United States after World War I, this starts in 1930s. We can see on the GDP, it's real GDP, annually. We can see that the development is not so straight, right? There are some spikes here, troughs, spikes. It's sort of cycling, right? So this is, of course, Great Depression, 29, here it is actually, 29, starting 29 to 33, Great Depression in the United States. Big drop, like, maybe 20, 30% in GDP. Well, not in GDP, in unemployment. GDP was like 15, 14%. Unemployment was much, the drop in unemployment, or the rise in unemployment, drop in employment was much, much bigger. So that looks like there is something wrong with that capitalism, right? This big depression. This is, of course, World War II. So this is not much to do with any economic developments, with any regulations. This is a major, of course, disruption, geopolitical disruption, World War II. But there is something here, the 70s in the United States, the end of the gold standard, 71, President Nixon, money, destruction of the money starts in, well, it starts even in the 19th century, but the major beginning of the destruction of money in the United States is the establishment of the Federal Reserve, central bank in the United States in 1913. But there was still some tie in the money and the gold, right? Could still exchange it, not individuals, but countries could exchange it. There was some partial convertibility to gold. No longer here. So huge inflation there, huge spikes in inflation, unemployment, GDP dropped. And again, relatively large recession, of course, combined with some developments in the world, creation of the OPEC, oil crisis in the early 70s that was part of it. Part of the problem was, of course, but it was actually a reaction. The OPEC establishment was a reaction of the Middle Eastern countries to what happened in the United States with the gold standard and of course political support of Israel in the war of Israel against the neighboring states, or defense of Israel against the neighboring states, attacking it constantly. And then we have something in the something big in the 2008 financial crisis, large financial crisis. So it looks like this capitalism does not run smoothly. There are some flaws. There are some troubles with it, right? So let's see what happens. How do people react to that? This is a Great Depression, of course, strikes, demonstrations. We don't have this, we don't have that. Unemployment, crash on the stock exchange. There was no milk, and so forth. Lots of problems. And who was to blame? Who was in the eyes of the public? Who was to blame? Who was always, when there is any problem, who was the scapegoat? Capitalism, right? Capitalism. The rich, those who profit, those who, financiers, shuffling with money. It's capitalism. And greed, right? Selfishness, greed. We have it here. When I go back there, it's interesting that about the profit, capitalist, profit-loving capitalist pigs, greedy capitalists, greedy businessmen. Most of the time, people talk about it when there's some big spike, some crisis, as if the greed was only there. No, the greed is there all the time. They're all after money all the time. They want to profit, right? So maybe those cycles are not about the greed. Maybe there's some other explanation why this happens. Maybe it has nothing to do with capitalism. We don't know yet. But in the eyes of the public, it's capitalism. It's the business. It's the greed. Capitalism doesn't work. You see it. Any crisis, it doesn't have to be major crisis like 2008 or financial crisis or the Great Depression. It's very often people first, not profits. Remember this. This is very important all the time. Profits, greed. Jesus is not for corporate greed, right? Billionaire pigs I think this is the Occupy Wall Street. There was a movement as a reaction to the 2008 crisis in the United States, where financial crisis started. So there was a movement, Occupy Wall Street. They were the villains. They caused it. The business, capitalism. So we will occupy them. We will limit or bar the movement of people there. People before profits. Tax the greedy. Feed the needy. Right? Don't concede greed. Occupy Wall Street. Socialist change, not climate change. We don't want climate to change. That's bad. Climate changes. We don't want that. We want socialist change. Democratic plan, not private profit. Greed kills. Big oil greed. No new fossil fuels. And this is one of the latest manifestations of the blatant evil and irrationalism. Just stop oil, right? That's what they're doing. Gluing themselves and smearing, destroying the beauty. Deep inside, what they're doing is not against oil. They're against capitalism. They're against profit. They're against the greed, selfishness. This is the COVID crisis. This time, what they're protesting against is big pharma. Again, capitalism, big companies, big pharma. They don't spread. Perhaps even would be better free of charge. Everything free of charge. The vaccines, right? We want all vaccines. This is all. We're all in this together, right? That's the slogan. We're all in this together. Just flood us with your vaccines and no intellectual property, nothing. We want the vaccines, right? Pfizer's greed kills. Pharma greed. Greed could kill us all. Periodically, you see in the American Congress, it seems to be more often and often. Any problem in the United States with the prices, price gouging, oil, gas, whatever problem you see in the society, always the scapegoat is business. So the CEOs of the big companies, mostly, go there, under oath, and talk about, we're, servicing the community, and of course we're capitalists, but, we bring the public good and social welfare and whatever. So they're always in the defense, always apologize, right, for what they did. Or did they? Did they create the problems? That's the question. Was it them who created the problems? Wasn't it something else? Just a couple of weeks ago, Mark Zuckerberg in front of the Congress, the online damage done to kids. They're exposed to some harmful videos, whatever. So one of the congressmen there said, Republicans said, you have blood on your hands, right? You have blood on your hands. It's like if you have the manufacturer of the rifles, and some criminal, uses the rifle to kill someone, and you blame the manufacturer or the distributor of the rifles. You have the blood on your hands. That's the same thing. Always. Zuckerberg, how many times he's been there, always defending. What he is now doing is apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry, we did the best, but we couldn't do more. I apologize. I know it's my fault, we couldn't do more. Just another hearing, right? Amount of profit made by Exxon, Chevron, Shell. Business victims vilified all the time. This is the biggest symbol of the greed in the 90s, when he was still not employed, but he was still the CEO. I think he's maybe still, of course, not the CEO, but he still owns some stock in the Microsoft. But back then, he was only the wrong person. He was a wonderful businessman and everything, but morally, didn't count. What he did with the Microsoft, how he built the wonderful company that changed the world. Every second computer, or I don't know how many computers have Microsoft in them. And so he was back then, not a good guy. He was only after greed. But then he stepped away from Microsoft and did what? Started the foundation, right? And only then was he praised. You see, he has two sides. He is not just this greedy businessman. He has this other side, altruist, giving what he created, giving it away. Now we can, morally, sort of, a little bit praise him that he's not so bad after all, right? So, what does this is, we saw what the politics does, what the people, let's say general public, what they do on the streets. Of course, not just in the streets, that's what 99% of people think. Profits are bad, greed is bad, selfishness is bad. Businessmen, any businessman is sort of suspicious, sort of latent criminal. So what does the economic profession says? Mainstream economics, free market capitalism is defective. It's impractical. Why? There's a market failure. We don't have this perfect competition that the textbook models present, that we should have as an ideal perfect competition. Since the 20s, right? In the 20th century, there was a perfect competition model developed. But if we look at the reality, it's not. It doesn't live. This capitalism doesn't live up to this ideal. So it's market failure. Public goods, should be produced more, but the market does not provide them. Externalities, we know all that, right? If you study economics, it's economics 101. Monopolies, business cycles, inflation. Well, what is important is that it is mainstream economics, right? About hope. I hope, in this school that you at least learn something about the Austrian School of Economics. You have the Austrian School of Economics here. Something about Mises, Hayek, Menger. Nothing? Okay. How many of you have studied economics at all? Okay. So there is a school of economics completely. It's not a homogeneous school. There are some big differences in the individual big names there, like Karl Menger, Ludwig von Mises, Friedrich Hayek, and many others after them. And they have pretty big differences between them, but still they're completely outside mainstream economics. And all these failures, or these alleged defects of capitalism, all of that has been thoroughly refuted. Decade after decade, times and times again refuted completely. Everything. No market failure. It's just, it's for another lecture, right? You can ask me in the Q&A more about that. So there's nothing like that is true. So capitalism does not fail here, at least in terms of practical functioning, practical operation, does not fail. So before I go on, I think it's high time that we define what capitalism actually is. What is capitalism? And what I mean by capitalism is laissez-faire capitalism. That is capitalism where there are no, or that is the social political system where there are no government regulations of the economy, no subsidies, no welfare state, no public education, public health care, nothing like that. Capitalism is the social system where the only function of the government is protection of the individual rights. Social system, political system, where the only function of the government is protection of the individual rights. Rights for life, liberty, property. No other rights are rights. And we're a system where all property is privately owned. Of course, the government needs some property, to operate. When you have police, you have to have some assets, some buildings. So that's of course. But other than confined to the proper functions of the government, everything is privately owned. That's capitalism. And if we compare this definition or this view, and this is not just subjective. You can ask me again. This is not this is my definition. You have your own definition. No, there's only one right definition. You can ask me then later why. It's not that's my definition. You have yours. Who knows? Who cares? It's just my definition. No, that's the only proper definition of capitalism. What I told you. So by that definition, if you look at the government expenditure, which is pretty, it's crude, but it's pretty good approximation of the involvement of the government in the economy and in the in society. Government expenditure as share of the GDP, right? Again, these are various countries. It's pretty much the same. The trend, you see the trend, right? It's fairly flat here. It's where the capitalism slowly develops, in the United States, in Western Europe a little bit later. It's still at the end of 19th century. It's still relatively little, and then it starts, right? And this is don't think this will go like that. No, this will go. If anything substantial does not change, it will go further. It will have still some cycles, but it will go there. So is that capitalism? Doesn't look like. Well, the government does, and it has to, of course, extract the money from people to do everything that government does. This is just the government debt, right? Debt as a percentage of GDP. So again, the trend is clear. And this starts in 1980. If we were here, let's say somewhere in early 20th century, it would be close to zero. And here it's already 1980. It's already somewhere 20. Various countries differently. Some countries, I think including the United States, have now the ratio more than 100%. Does it look like capitalism? Not to me. United States, just federal level. We have state level and the county level, local level of the government. Just federal level. 100 regulators This is the office, this is the departments, like ministries, like we call it in Europe, in Czech Republic, ministries. They call it departments or regulators, various agencies, right? More than 100 of them. 75,000 pages of regulations. Just compare with Czech Republic. 2 million. 2 million regulations, not pages, 2 million regulations. Of course, there are some, that are no longer enforced, no longer used. But even if it was one half of it, who could possibly conform to this mess, to this jungle that is choking every one of us? This is the list of the American government agencies, including all these departments, agriculture, wherever you look, agriculture, education, energy. You know how many agencies regulate one of, if not the most regulated industry in the United States? Guess what is the most regulated industry in the United States? Maybe now energy, but certainly for many years it's been financial industry, banking, like at least 5-6 regulators, spewing new and new regulations, quite often regulating the just financial industry, one of the most regulated industries in the United States. Does that sound like capitalism to you? Not to me. So what we have there, I need to speed up a little bit. What we have here is, again, the hockey stick now trying to come to something, some puzzle here. There's some puzzle here, right? So this is the United States, the green one. So it's not capitalism. We said that's mixed economy, right? That's no longer capitalism. This is my hypothesis, what capitalism would be if there was really, really laissez-faire capitalism. It would be completely different. GDP, prosperity, happiness, life expectancy, amount of innovations, everything. It would be unimaginable world, unimaginable. So that would be capitalism. This dotted whatever line. So something is missing here. Some explanation of this gap. Why don't we have capitalism? We have this mixed economy. Something is missing. What is it? Where is it? What is it? So you saw it on the pictures, all the pictures and demonstrations, protests. You saw it already. It's something that has to do with capitalism, of course. So what do you do when you go shopping? What do you do? Are you going shopping to stimulate the economy? No. You go shopping for improving your life, for your interest. So it's not for the public. It's not for needs of others. It's for you. You are the center. Right? So you go shopping. So that's self-interest. That's selfish, isn't it? Again, shopping, wonderful. They don't do it to create jobs. They don't care about jobs in Minnesota or China. No, they don't care about jobs. About who works to produce the goods they just bought. No, they're thinking about themselves. It's their life, right? Did they kill someone? No, they're just shopping, but they're pursuing their own self-interest, right? These workers, are they stimulating the economy? Maybe as a byproduct, they don't care about the economy. They care about their jobs because they wanna have money to provide for them and their families, right? It's their own self-interest. So we were on the side of those who are the other part, other than the businessmen. What about the businessmen? Of course, the businessmen are doing the same thing. They're pursuing their own self-interest, right? And the exchange between them is not a zero-sum game. It's both profit, both have the benefit, right? If Apple produces iPhone, here is iPhone. Does Apple lose something when they sell me the iPhone? Do I lose something? Well, I get, I don't know, $1,000 or whatever, but I'm not losing anything. I'm benefiting. My $1,000 or 23,000 crowns or whatever, they're much, I mean, the value of the iPhone is much, I don't know, maybe 3 times bigger to me than the money that I'm giving for the iPhone, right? So I'm benefiting from the trade. Apple does the same. Steve Jobs or his successors benefit from that trade. They have a huge margin on any iPhone, on any product, huge margin. It's just a symbol, right? Apple is a symbol. It's every business that tries to be profitable, or should be profitable, of course, otherwise it's not business but charity. So capitalism is selfish. Selfish self-interest. What have we heard from our childhood? You know, when we were this young, what have we heard? Don't be selfish. Everyone told us, mother, father. That's cool. And then we started to read textbooks, television, and everywhere. Don't be selfish. Selfishness is bad. It's cruel. It's cold. It's harming others. Humanity versus selfishness. That's the poster of the Social Democratic Party. You see it everywhere, everywhere. Today, everywhere, you know, nowadays. It's humanity, you know, it's inhuman to be selfish. It's not just, you know, some, you know, suspicious. It's inhuman, you know. It's either humanity, you're either humane, moral, or you're selfish, right? That's their slogan. Humanity versus selfishness. This is from Facebook. 20K likes, 2.4K shares. Everyone agrees with that. Everyone agrees. So when you're entering the human society, it's just a symbol, right? You're entering the door. You go to, you know, visit someone, or, you know, you go to some place where other people are, not just you. Some other people are. Let your shoes and ego stay outside. Your ego is, you know, you're here for the others. Selfishness is a swamp that sucks it all, and gives back nothing. It's a businessman, I guess. Harry Truman, American president after World War II, selfishness and greed, individual or national, caused most of our troubles. William Gladstone, I think it was English politician, selfishness is the greatest curse on the human race. One of the symbol of greed and selfishness and evil in the United States still is, and everywhere, you know, cited and not cited, mentioned. Bernie Madoff, right? He had the biggest Ponzi scheme in history, luring investors, unsuspected investors, into this big Ponzi scheme that, you know, after I don't know how many years collapsed. It was all fake. So he was a criminal. He was fraud. But everyone says it was self-interest. It was selfish, right? So businessmen are selfish. Those who don't steal, cheat. And this one is also selfish. There's something wrong there, right? In the concept. Selfish is someone who produces, like Steve Jobs and all these workers in the factory. And this person is also selfish. Strange, isn't it? And many criminals are, you know, called selfish. Symbol of financial greed. Was he really acting in self-interest? Well, that's a big question. Was it in his self-interest to do what he did? New York Times, like 2 or 3 years ago, New York Times, the president, it's about Donald Trump, right? President has made selfishness our national credo. Make America great again. What she thinks Trump's worldview is, you know, the idea that's all dog eat dog. You know, you're a chump to care about others. Chump is like a fool. You care about others, you fool. You're selfish. And as opposed to what? What she would like to see, you know, as a nation we're losing, you know, we lost our sense of altruistic moral purpose, collective will, you know, regarding, you know, we should have regard for others, like you know, self-interest is defined by, you know, disregarding others, right? It's just me, you know, I don't care about others, trade or cooperation, love, no, nothing. I'm just, you know, just me, it's selfish, is it? Before he was president, George Bush, he had big problems with drinking, right? Maybe you don't know that. So this is his confession. My problem was not only drinking, it was selfishness. The booze, you know, the alcohol and drinking, the booze was leading me to put myself ahead of others, especially my family. I loved Laura and the girls too much to let that happen. So where did he, when he discovered that, where did he turn then? Faith. Faith showed me a way out. You know, not reason, you know, not thinking, faith. God, you know, God said so. It's set in the stone. It's commandment. So faith was the answer to get rid of the selfishness, right? So capitalism is selfish. We know that already. It is selfish. It depends on what we mean by selfishness. Selfishness is evil, right? That's another premise. Well, of course, capitalism is evil. That's clear syllogism, isn't it? So free market capitalism is immoral. You see it everywhere, again, quickly. Money is the root of all evil. How many times you've heard that? Robber barons in any, at least until recently, in any book of history that you know, students learn from in the United States, robber barons, you know, the industrialists that created the spike, you know, created the blade on the hockey stick, they are the robber barons. They are the, you know, the robbers. You know, they steal by providing work to people, jobs, creating wealth, being self-interested. They're robber barons, greedy capitalist pigs, fat cats from the Wall Street. They exploit, they oppress, right? Who said that? Exploiting, wasn't it Karl Marx? Exploiting, oppression, right? That's the inherent part of capitalism, really, is it? President Obama in the United States said in one speech, "You didn't build that. You know, you're not alone there in, you know, in those businesses and creating stuff and producing. You're not alone. You know, you have these and these partners. You're not alone. You didn't build that. You know, you individual. You're basically nothing. Society is everything, right? Community. That's, you know, that's who builds community. Did you see any community somewhere? No, I haven't seen community. I only see individuals, right? But Obama said, you didn't build that. Everyone applauded. Everyone applauded. Not just the left, right as well. You didn't build that. You have to give back to the community service. Pay your fair share. You're too selfish. You should pay back. Pay back what? Did I steal something or what? Social justice, inequality, consumerism. You consume too much. You shouldn't consume. If you didn't consume, you wouldn't be here. There would be nothing here if we didn't consume. There would be no lights, nothing. No chairs, nothing. So we have to consume to live, right? We have to consume values. We have to produce values and then consume them. White supremacy now, you know, maybe inherent in capitalism. White supremacy. It was for the whites, you know, capitalism. So we see there is some clash here or some alleged contradiction between the moral and practical aspect of capitalism. We see that even mainstream economists say that capitalism, free markets are not practical. They have flaws, they have defects, they have to be somehow regulated. I mean, the defects have to be somehow repaired, adjusted by the government interventions and everything. But let's say Austrian economists were basically right, and capitalism is practical. But is it moral? Well, we just saw on many slides it's not moral. It's evil. What did the biggest champions of capitalism in history say about business, about morality that is inherent in capitalism? Adam Smith. To feel much for others and little for ourselves, that to restrain our selfish, as opposed to indulge our benevolent affections, constitutes the perfection of human nature. So to restrain our selfishness and to indulge our benevolent affections, as if there could be nothing in my self-interest to be benevolent to others. As if I could never help to anyone if I'm selfish, if I'm self-interested, right? But if I restrain this, if I curb this selfishness, I perfect my human nature, because it's in the human nature to be, this selfish, low, vulgar, materialistic, harming others' nature, right? Ludwig von Mises, value-free. Economics, does not deal with values. It's just about, from A implies B. It's not about values. Ethics is subjectivist. So I don't have any much to say about ethics. I'm paraphrasing, right? So he was basically utilitarian. If you know what utilitarianism is, the essence of utilitarianism is collectivism. The goal is to make the greatest number happy, right? Not the individual, deserves to be, to benefit from his or her actions. But what counts is not the individual. What counts is the social welfare. Well, they call it the greatest happiness for the greatest numbers. Greatest number, right? So that was basically his ethics, and not just his. All the champions, alleged defenders. Well, they were defenders, but very, very poor and inconsistent defenders of capitalism. Friedrich Hayek. If socialists understood economics, they wouldn't be socialists. Not at all. Not at all. They would still be socialists. It's not about economics. We saw it. It's not about economics. Economics works. Capitalism works. But it's allegedly immoral. So if socialists understood economics, they would still be socialists, because socialism is a moral idea, not practical. It's a moral idea, right? Totally wrong. And he is praised for that. You see it everywhere on Facebook, everywhere. Wonderful quote, right? If socialists understood economics, they wouldn't be socialists. Oh, they would. They would. Does not depend on economics at all. Another quote by Hayek. By pursuing his own interest, he frequently promotes that of the society. That's important. That's the ultimate goal, right? He is pursuing this, this invisible hand, right? That he took it from Adam Smith, invisible hand. You have these private vices, self-interest, private vices. But if we let you operate, if we let you relatively free, you will then make society better. Social welfare, right? Greatest happiness for the greatest number. Society will benefit. We are not that important, society, effectually, than when he really intends to promote it. So it's not his intention of the individual, his intention to be selfish. But as an outcome, this invisible hand, we have prosperity of society. We have the social welfare. Milton Friedman, one of the great mistakes is to judge policies and programs by their intentions. Really? So it's a great mistake to judge policy by its intention rather than their results. So I don't care much about intentions. I just care about, what comes out of that. Isn't it strange? So if intentions of the socialists are great, which he thinks are, elsewhere he says, you're just going too far, answering the opposition socialists. You're just going too far. You use too much coercion, too much force, the government. Your aims, your goals are not, not bad. They're basically good, but you're using the bad means, and outcome of your policies, coercive policies, government is bad. That's what he thinks counts, the outcome, but not the intentions, right? And the intentions, of course, are subject of morality. Are they good, those intentions? He doesn't care, right? Margaret Thatcher, by the way, she's wonderful. She was a wonderful politician. She was so, I think, beneficial as an outcome, of course, what she did with Britain, with absolutely incomparable with what Reagan did with the United States in the 80s, right? So Thatcher was, fantastic, magnificent. But she was not a philosopher. She was not a moralist, right? She took basically what was her, let's say, philosophical inspirations, like Hayek, right? Certainly many other intellectuals, but Hayek, it's known that Hayek was her major inspiration. The problem, quote, the problem with socialism is you eventually run out of money, run out of other people's money. That's the problem. So not that, we have this selfishness is bad and social welfare and, we sacrifice for this and this and it's not that. It's not, the essence. Otherwise, she would name it. You're trying to do this, promote this social welfare, this good for society, but somehow you don't have enough money. You don't steal too much from the people by taxes or inflation, and eventually the money runs out. So that's the problem. The money runs out. Nothing about morality right here. So I need to really maybe skip something. Morality of altruism. We're at the climax now. So you saw morality of selfishness is absolutely rejected as evil, and what is instead adopted by people for centuries and centuries, morality of altruism. Altruism is not benevolence. No, that's not altruism. It's not a goodwill to other people. It's not helping other people. Altruism is a term coined by French philosopher Auguste Comte in 19th century. It's otherism, others count, not you, others count, right? You should live for others. So that's all like altar in religion, altar, right? You're at the altar, you sacrifice. So that's altruism. So that's the dominant, by far the dominant morality of centuries and centuries. So what does it actually do? Morality of altruism. It says this is moral, right? Altruism is moral. Sacrifice is moral. And selfishness is not just alternative morality. There's altruist or self. This is completely outside morality. You're either moral or you're selfish. This is completely, you're like beast. You don't even qualify to be human, right? You saw the posters. It's humanity versus selfishness, right? That's exactly it. So you're outside even, thinking about, am I moral? Once you're selfish, right? So that's the view by the dominant mentality, that's the view of, where selfishness is in terms of the moral realm. What is good? What should we do? Selfishness doesn't count at all. I mean, this is absolutely. Whereas, and when we then get back, get to what selfishness actually is. Whereas the reality is such that there is a morality, there is a realm of morality whose task. This is a philosophical field, right? It starts somewhere deeper in philosophy. What is existence? How do we know everything? And than political philosophy, and major part of philosophy is moral philosophy, morality. So the realm of morality too is to define what is good. What is, why do we need values at all? And what are the values we should pursue? What is in our interest? What is it actually if we say it's in our self-interest? But what is it? Is it obvious what is in our own self-interest? It's not obvious at all. You have to think about it. Is it in my own interest or is it not? It's not a whim. It's not a momentary feeling. You have to think about it. You have lots of options, where to go, what to do, your career, your romantic relationships. It's all about you. It's you. It's your self-interest. It gets a lot of thinking, right? So what the actual picture should be is, this is morality, and the morality of altruism, of selflessness, completely bypasses the whole realm of morality by what? By saying, I don't care what your interest is. I don't care what the values are. The only thing I care about is that whatever values you achieve, you have to give them up. You have to give them to others, because others count, right? So instead of developing, the theories about what are values and what is the standard of value? Is it the human life or what? What is the ultimate value according to which we, think about as against standard? Is it in line with my highest value, like maintaining my own life, right? That should be highest value. Maintaining my own life, still being alive. Otherwise, I would go there, and jump from the bridge or under the train, and that's it. I don't need any morality. But if I want to stay alive, I have to think about it, right? So, altruism doesn't do that. It says, do whatever you do, create whatever you can. Just be sure it's not for yourself. Just don't keep the goods. Don't keep the values. Just pass them to others, right? That's what, morally counts. So it's sacrifice, morality of sacrifice. So why should we sacrifice? Still don't know the answer. Why should we sacrifice? So what morality of selfishness, of real, genuine self-interest, properly defined, proper conception of self-interest, what it does is to start with answering the dominant conventional morality, answering what you are doing is actually, like answering my opponent. I'm for the selfishness, I'm answering my opponent. What you're doing with your you're selfish, so you're sacrificing others to yourself, right? You're a greedy capitalist, you're exploiting, so that's one type of sacrifice. We don't want that, right? Say the altruists and the self-sacrifice, this conventional morality, we don't want that. We want you to sacrifice to others, not others to yourself. You shouldn't do harm, so you sacrifice to others. So it's the other sacrifice. So it's yourself to others or others to yourself. And the proper morality of self-interest says no sacrifice at all. You don't need any sacrifice. It's properly defined by the whole realm of morality. And it's a lot of reading, a lot of thinking, what is moral, what is good, what is in my own self-interest. So self-interest implies no sacrifice at all. That's the real self-interest. No sacrifice. It's not my interest to sacrifice someone to me, to exploit him, to manipulate him, to steal, cheat. It's not in my interest. If you think about it more, it's not in my interest. It was not in the interest of Bernie Madoff, this criminal, this Ponzi scheme guy, to cheat or steal. It was not in his. He ended up in jail after a couple of years. He's committed suicide. So it was not in his interest to do what he did. It was not in the interest of George Bush to, just drink and not think and, just whims. I go with my party people, just drink. It was not in his self-interest, right? So he probably was not selfish. So this is actually what selfish virtues are, what selfishness is. The overarching virtue, which is actually manifested in these other virtues in the individual areas of human action, of human behavior, the overarching virtue that is inherent in all of the others is rationality. And it's not commandment, just use reason. No, it's not commandment. This rationality is the only virtue that keeps you in contact with reality. You have to understand what's going on in reality. You have to understand cause and effect. If I do this, this will be implication, like laws of nature, Newton, Galileo. And the same holds in the area of human action, of human relationships, right? So it's about reason discovering causal causalities, and thereby knowing reality, thereby innovating, thereby finding new things, producing new things, evaluating people, whether they harm him or not. It's all about using reason. It's not about feelings. Feelings are very important, but their role is not cognition. Their role is not to know the world. If I a little bit digression, reason is not against emotions. Emotions are extremely important, but their role is not to know the world, to be another avenue to cognition. Their role is to experience life. We experience life, our action, through our emotions, as a reward or punishment for our actions, right? So rationality, how it manifests itself, intellectual independence. You don't go by feelings or views of others. No, you have critical thinking. You have your own mind. You have to critically assess, what people say, what they read, what they say, whatever. You have to be intellectually independent. You have to produce, otherwise, you die. You have to produce values, right? You have to be productive. Justice, honesty, integrity, that's all selfish because it's in your own self-interest. This is the morality of life as against the morality of, sacrificing your values. If you sacrifice consistently, where you end up. If you sacrifice everything you have, everything, all the time, you die. And that's why morality of sacrifice is a morality of death. That's the premise. Hidden premise, that's the morality of death. You see the symbol. Well, I don't want to offend any one of you, but you see the symbol. Almost everyone is wearing the cross. That's the symbol, right? That's the virtue in conventional morality. Sacrifice, and then you get on the cross. Sacrifice for the mankind, Jesus. Pride, another. It's not humility. No. Humility is the opposite. Pride is the virtue. Selfishness is the only pro-life morality, rational morality based on human nature. Standard of the good is man's life. To maintain man's life, you have to enact the causes. That's the goal, maintain human life. And selfishness is a profound achievement, right? It's a profound achievement to be selfish. It's not some atomistic behavior, I'm alone and I don't care about anyone. No, that's not selfish. It's not manipulating others. It's not whims. It's not my feelings. It's thoughtful, very thoughtful action, right? You can ask me, what about the poor? That's first question. Everyone, after all slides and everything, everyone, everywhere, any talk, any whatever you have ever listened to or will ever. And what about the poor? You can ask me if we still have time. What about the poor? So if we have this proper morality of self-interest, where does it lead to? If we're in society organized on the basis of self-interest, is a society that wants to protect people who are trying to be moral. They want to live their life. They want to be moral. And the direct principle, moral, I underscore 2 times more, moral principle that flows from the morality of self-interest is the political principle of individual rights, right? That's why I'm showing here again, the Declaration of Independence, right? July 4th, the biggest, festive day in the United States. Declaration of Independence, you have the rights to life, property, free liberty, and pursuit of happiness. There were problems there. There were big problems because the intellectual fathers, including John Locke, who was the intellectual father of individual rights back in England in 18th century, John Locke, philosopher. What he said was, and of course it's not just what he said, he was thinking about it, but ultimately he based these individual rights where? Where did he base them? In morality of self-interest? No, I don't know. He said these rights are, he called it self-evident. They're natural. That's what he meant by natural, right? Self-evident. You just see them. It's there. It's there, but it's not self-evident, right? For rational development, rational justification of rights, you need morality. If your morality is to sacrifice everything, sacrifice your life, why should you have any rights? Why should you have right to life or property? If your moral goal is to give up, submit, right? So you only can base individual and justify individual rights based on morality of self-interest. That's what the founding fathers in the United States didn't have. And that's the biggest contradiction that is tearing apart the whole world. Since then, tearing apart the whole world in America. Morality of self-sacrifice versus individual rights. So again, what is the government? We said the capitalism was the social system, political system, where government has only which functions? To protect the individual rights. How does government protect individual rights? Another question that leads to it, how can you violate individual rights? How do you violate individual? How can anyone violate your right to life or property or liberty? The only thing is we will come to that. First, my question is, what is the essence of the government? What is the essence? One word. Essence of the government. Any government action. Any government action. What is the essence? This is the essence. Gun, symbol, physical force, physical force. If you have laws that no one enforces, it's ridiculous. Law of the state of the government has always must always be enforced. Otherwise, there will be no point in government, right? So it has to be enforceable by, gun, jail. So the essence of the government is force. Is thereby government wrong? No. There is only one instance when the government should use force. Against whom should it use force? Against them who use force first, who initiate force. If someone initiates force against you, he or she is thereby violating your rights. And that's the proper function of the government, to prevent violation of rights or to punish violation of individual rights. That's the only function of the government. Why? Because if government uses the gun in other instances, then it itself violates the individual rights, because it itself is the initiator of force. If I wanna start up my private school or whatever private in healthcare, these biggest destroyed areas of our life, healthcare and education, and if I don't follow some utterly irrational, despicable law regulating, who can provide education and has to be licensed and whatever million regulations, then it's the government who is initiating the force, because they won't allow me to be free to offer my services, right? To offer my services, trading with people, and they would love to trade with me. I mean, with anyone who is capable of, providing such services or any other goods. So government, in all instances, other than preventing society from, criminals, or not preventing, you cannot prevent it, but it happens, but punishing and simply excluding the force from society. So other than acting in defense, in self-defense, other than that, it's the government itself who is the biggest destroyer of individual rights. And that's our society. That has been the society, you saw the hockey stick, that's the society for all the history, and then some short period of 100 years. There's almost 100% of protection of individual rights. And then it starts again, mixed economy, destruction of capitalism, government as the biggest violator of individual rights. So the functions of the government, clear after what I've said. Police, military, justice, right? Because you will always have some disputes, right, among people, peaceful disputes. We have this contract, right? We have this contract. But I think you violated the contract. I had some provisions there, and you should have paid me that, and you paid me or late or whatever. So I have some disputes. We have contracts, whatever. Or two people are fighting each other. Who is the one who initiated the force? Who is the one who is defending himself, and who is the one who is the culprit? Who started it all? We have to have objective means, objective instrument to identify who initiated the force first and who is defending and resolve disputes, right? That's what we have the justice court system for. 3 functions. So if selfishness is proper morality, why hasn't it been recognized and accepted as moral? Basically, it's philosophy. It's always, ultimately it's always philosophy. It's ideas. So David Hume, one of the biggest philosophical destroyers in history. Among others, what he said was, David Hume, sometime in, I think he died in the year when Adam Smith published his Wealth of Nations, 1776. So he was the generation before Adam Smith, 18th century. The rules of morality, said David Hume, are not the conclusion of our reason. To this day, it is the major tenet of philosophy, uncontested. Everyone believes that. Reason has nothing to say in morality. It's all about feelings, intuitions. That's what Hume said. It's passions. Reason is the slave of the passions, right? We don't know. Nothing is objective. It's all subjective. What you think is moral or what you think is good, it's good for you, not good for me. We cannot have any principle. My reason cannot establish it, right? It's much, much more complicated, but this is basically it. And this is extremely influential philosopher still in the realm of morality. Rules of morality are not the conclusions of our reason. And Hayek, by the way, Friedrich Hayek, big so-called defender of capitalism, he loves this. He cites it, several times in his works. Of course, it's not reason. It has to be something else where we have our morality from. It's the customs, it's the traditions, it's the rules of the group, That's what Hayek says based on this guy. Is ought, that's essentially what David Hume say. Is the facts of reality. Ought is what we should do. Ought or should, right? You cannot derive the ought. You cannot derive what is good, what you should do, from what is, from your nature, from the nature of the world or natural laws. You cannot derive what you should do. It's impossible. That's the is-ought dilemma, right? So apart from that, Hume was the biggest destroyer, philosophical destroyer of the power of reason to know reality. So reason has been philosophically completely destroyed, starting with many others before Hume. Hume was the big sort of climax, but then came another climax after Hume. Immanuel Kant, German philosopher. So he sealed it. Now it's forever, right? And we still bear the fruits of that. So reason is out, not just from morality. Nothing is absolute. Truth is subjective. It's your definition, right? You could say capitalism. That's your definition. I have mine, right? Who knows what the definition should be? It's all subjective. It's all relative. We don't have any objective basis. In reality, how do we derive our concepts from reality? By sense perception and then creating concepts. How do we create concepts? Words, after all. Concepts are just linguistic conventions, right? You hear it everywhere in philosophy departments. I'm not professional philosopher, but that's the major, stream of philosophy. You no longer deal with how concepts are derived from reality. You take words, just how people use words. So we spend our time, as professional philosophers, about these linguistic and how they develop and etymology and all these things. And there's no connection between what you perceive. You don't choose what you perceive. When you open your eyes, you don't choose it, but you choose how you form your concepts, right? But current philosophy says concepts are just linguistic and it's all subjective. Logic, my logic can be different from yours. Karl Marx, we have polylogism, right? Proletariat has different logic than the bourgeois class. They have different logics. Nowadays, it's not class sort of distinction, but still philosophers today will tell you, well, this is this old Aristotelian logic, right? Aristotelian. Now we have a different logic. Who knows? Conceptual chaos. None of these key, crucial concepts, if you ask people, no one knows. No one is able to tell you. What is the reason? Well, this they will give you, I don't know, something, use your brain, but, it's sort of cold reason, some logic, some inferences, some, deduction, but they don't, it's just all sloppy, it's convoluted, utterly confused. The same holds for so key concepts in every day of our life, everywhere around the world for hundreds of years. So it's pretty radical, right, what I'm saying? It's pretty radical. I know. Selfishness. That's why I made it yellow, right? That's what we were talking about today. Selfishness. No one knows what, everyone knows what selfishness is. That's evil, right? But that's because we haven't used our minds to think about concepts, how they're derived and what is actually in our own self-interest. Justice. Individualism. No one knows what individualism is. Collectivism. Rights. Everyone will tell you, I have the right to job, right? I have the right to internet. It's nowadays, in Sweden or everywhere, somewhere in Scandinavia, we have the right to internet. Others have to be forced by the gun to provide the internet for me. Well, that's the right for internet, right to internet, right to health care. I have the right to health care. So someone else has to sacrifice so that I can get health care. Taxes, right? That's theft. Taxes are theft. Or inflation is theft. Freedom. You know what freedom is? What most people, 99% of people will tell you what freedom is? Doing whatever you feel like. That's freedom. And therefore, freedom has to be limited. So if you start with conception of freedom as doing whatever you feel like, of course it has to be limited. But the point is that these concepts are extremely abstract concepts based on lots of inferences and on epistemology. This is the philosophy of cognition. How do we know? Concept, percept, sense perception, then morality, then political philosophy, and only then we get to the concept of freedom. It's completely something different. Freedom is the absence of the initiation of force. That's freedom. It's absence of initiation of force. So why should you limit the absence of initiation? If you limit the absence, then you initiate it. Then you use force. Because freedom is absence of initiation force, not doing whatever you feel like. Democracy, same thing. Capitalism, government, many others. Need and anti-greed. So everyone needs something, right? So that's what counts. Everyone needs, and And this greed, this bad, evil selfishness has to be curbed. We have to have some tools against this greed, right? So what we hear every day is solidarity. You know what this code word stands for? Do you know what solidarity is? What they now use the word solidarity. It's a fine word. It's a good word. It's a proper concept. But they have now meaning like decades misused, completely destroyed the concept. They use it to identify sacrifice. They call it solidarity. You have to be in solidarity with all people who need something. You have to be solidary with the old people, with the sick people. They need to, have this need to provide for their welfare, their pensions and everything, and every need that you can imagine. Internet, you have to provide for that. But basically, solidarity means something, some quote real need, like when you're sick, education. Of course, we have to have education for everyone. Like everyone has to have access, regardless of how they work, what they do to produce values and trade and to pay. No, they need education. Of course, everyone needs education. So we have to have solidarity, right? If someone doesn't have the means to buy education, it has to be taken from others, stolen from others. That's solidarity, right? Common good, social welfare, social justice. It's slogan after slogan, cliche after cliche. Everyone uses them. It just goes without, passes without, noticing anyone. And when we're using these slogans and not challenging them, we're swallowing the collectivist, self-sacrificial morality of self-sacrifice, of altruism. Others first, not me. Others first. That's all in there. They're carriers. These ideas are carriers of this morality and philosophy, social justice. Stakeholder capitalism. You've heard that, right? Stakeholder. It's not just the shareholders who should profit from their wealth, from the stocks that they have in the company. It's stakeholders. You know what stakeholder is? It's everyone. It's the government. It's the consumers. It's the local people in the community, in the town or the city where the company is. All of them are stakeholders. So they call it stakeholder, so that everyone has a say. So you no longer control your property. So nominally it's still your property or company or any assets you have and for business. But it's no longer shareholder, it's stakeholder. They have the say by law, right? So that system is called not socialism, it's called fascism. Fascism is when your means of production, when your property nominally still is yours, belongs to you, but you cannot freely dispose with it. You cannot use it as you would like to dispose it. Trade with it, produce based on your reason. It's what the other stakeholders, everyone says, right? CSR, corporate social responsibility, DEI, it's sort of common today, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, ESG, this is the latest outcome of the utter irrationality of our time, right? ESG. Need or greed behind almost all legislation. It's need. Anyone needs something, let's provide it. We have to be solidarity. We have to be compassionate, right, with them. Or we have to curb the greed. These businessmen, these suspicious, maybe criminals, sacrifices everywhere. So the result of all this is colossal injustice, destruction of education, erosion of individual rights, massive welfare state. Notice I don't use the word redistribution. This is completely false concept, because redistribution presupposes that there was some distribution and then it's redistributed, that there was some pie, right? There was some social pie. On the market it was somehow distributed, and then comes the government and redistributes it. But that's wrong. That's completely wrong picture. There is no distribution. If I create something, you create something, you create something, you create something, is there any pie No, there's no pie. It's yours, it's mine. There's no social pie. It's all nonsense. So redistribution tacitly, implicitly agrees with that there is something, distributed. No one distributed anything. We just produced something, or did not produce, and want others to produce for us, right? These are parasites, right? That don't produce and want something else. I mean, from what others produce, they want it. Massive welfare state, taxation and inflation theft, choking flood of regulations, slow economic growth is the result, military weakness, moral appeasement. You see what happens in Israeli versus, Hamas and all the neighboring states, of course. Iran is behind all of that. And how America behaves, you see it. Military weakness, moral appeasement. We'll see how it all turns out. Or Russia versus Ukraine. It's all result of morality. If you dig deeper, it's all result of morality of self-sacrifice. It's all in that morality. Threat of barbarism from foreign aggressors. That's what hopefully is not coming, but who knows? I'm not so optimistic. Capitalism is the only moral and just social system. Why are we losing it? So again, now you could use that one word. Why are we losing it? Why? Because capital, it's morality, right? It's morality. It's morality of self-sacrifice. Capitalism is fundamentally incompatible with altruist morality of self-sacrifice. That's the Declaration of Independence from the very beginning, having in it inherently this big contradiction. We have these rights, but who gave them to us? God. And God is the one who, controls our lives, and we have to sacrifice now no longer to God, but we should sacrifice to others, to society, maybe to the environment, right? Now we shouldn't sacrifice too much to society, but to the environment, to the planet, right? The planet is first. Human life, not that important. Planet. I mean, that's, of course, much more complicated, but this is the essence. What I'm telling you is the essence. Capitalism is not an end, but a means to an end. It's important. It's not an end. Because, capitalism, okay, we start with capitalism. We start with freedom. That's axiom, right? Is it? This axiom, free society, capitalism, everyone wants it. Everyone doesn't want it. It's not an end. It's a means to an end. So what is the end to which capitalism is the means, is the tool? What is the proper end? Rational selfishness. Reason and morality. Reason and morality. The philosopher that I will refer to at the end of this, she is called Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand. And she once said, I'm not primarily an advocate of capitalism. I'm advocate of selfishness. And I'm not primarily advocate of selfishness, but of reason. So it's all ultimately because we want to be rational. Why do we want to be rational? Because we want to stay alive. If you don't use reason, we don't stay alive. The conflict between capitalism and socialism is fundamentally philosophical, not economic or political. Not economic or political. We need an intellectual revolutionary war, not a superficial political battle like right and left. You see, American Republicans, it's ridiculous what they do. It's so ridiculous and so evil. Just the hearings in the Congress, if you saw what they do to the businessmen, right? What laws they propose. Regulation. Free speech out. That's coming from Republicans. Free speech out. You don't want it. Everything should be controlled by the laws, by the government. So it's not about the right and left. Right now and left are both collectivist. Collectivist, statist, altruist. What we face is a wholesale destruction of concepts. concept. So if we want to start to think about and maybe to adopt and maybe then to defend morality of selfishness, it's not enough. We have to go deeper, because defending something, thinking about something, starts with concepts. We have to know where do the concepts, where do they come from? What is this reason? What is this what is this morality of values? What are these concepts? What do they refer? They just came here, the concepts. No, that's what we use. That's how we create sentences. That's how we think in concepts. So we have to start with concepts, not with these very abstract, most important concepts, political, moral. But we have to start with theory, how concepts are formed, how they should be used. They are objective. So this is a wholesale destruction of our concept. That's the primary battle that we have to lead. Not moral battle. This is the primary battle, concepts. That's why I'm stopping everyone. I'm stopping everyone if he or she starts using these slogans, social welfare and redistribution. I'm immediately stopping. What are you talking about? What redistribution? You say social justice. What is it? Can you explain what is social justice? I don't understand these words. Yeah, justice. I know what it is. I know how it's justice. I mean, how it's inferred from earlier concepts. We have to wage a conceptual war. When words lose their, it's not mine. It's someone said it many maybe centuries ago. I don't know. It's very, very well put. When words lose their meaning, people lose their liberty. That's it. We're losing it very fast. We have been losing it for more than a century. So this is the stick. This is what's going to happen if we let it. This is what's going to happen. How to save capitalism? This required is moral revolution. So I talked about this philosopher Ayn Rand. This is, of course, her novel, Atlas Shrugged. And it's, the symbolism, right? It's Atlas, it's not, her invention, but she used it very well, in her thinking, in her novels, in her philosophy. Who is carrying on his shoulders, on the shoulders of them, all of them. It's not one person, but here it's the sort of mystical Atlas, right? Atlas, the giant carrying the world. So this giant, it's all people who use reason. It's scientists, philosophers. It can be anyone who uses reason. Businessmen. Artists. Art is a great thing. Art is extremely important thing. Artists. Anyone who uses reason carries this world on their shoulders, right? And what happens if you choke them more and more and more, if you make this world heavier and heavier, what happens? This happens. He shrugs. That's the Atlas Shrugged. So if there's one book which will tell you a million times better what I told you this evening, the only one, if you're really allowed, imagine the situation, right? You will only read one book, nothing else. You just cannot read anything else. The only book that will tell you in the best terms what I told you about not just selfishness, but about how, what's going on with our world for centuries. This is it. This is the book. It has been translated to Czech like 10 years ago. It's called Atlasova Vzpoura. Atlasova Vzpoura. Atlas Shrugged. And if you are allowed to read two books instead of one, the second one will be this one, The Fountainhead. It's about the architect Howard Rourke, who is against the opposition of the whole world, who is trying to maintain his intellectual independence, create, build, regardless of what people think about him. He uses his reason. And also it's been translated in to Czech. I think it was in 2000. It's already 20 years on the market, 24 years on the market. And the Czech name is Zdroj, the fountainhead. Of course, you will have the presentation then available somewhere. Will be downloadable. So you will have the some suggestions on my part. What to read apart from the novels. I would definitely start with the novel. Definitely, I would start with the novels. They take a while, but they're novels. It's not just some, quote, dry reading of philosophy or economics. These are novels, so wonderful novels. These are breathtaking novels. They will consume you, and you won't get, you won't go to bed, you won't go to sleep if you read these novels. And then tons and tons and tons and tons, endless tons of materials online. I mean, YouTube and everywhere. In English, in Czech, we have our Facebook page and our internet web page and YouTube channel. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Again, I didn't make it. If anyone is still interested in Q&A, I told you, right? I was trying, but.
You have a question?
Go ahead.
I just want to ask, do you know any country that implement the capitalism in a way, like as you discussed, like in the moral selfishness in the present or in the past, or if you're optimist in a country, like they can implement in a positive way?
Yeah, good question. As I said, in history, the first country, actually Margaret Thatcher said once very, very nice sentence. Europe sort of was created on the basis of history. Just history developed in various wars and everything. United States was created on the basis of idea of individual rights. So in history, the first country and that ever got closest to capitalism was the United States, America. In the, let's say, I will tell you why I'm saying this specific period. Last third of the 19th century. Why last third? Not, let's say, around the middle of the 19th century. Remember, Declaration of Independence, 1776. Then the Constitution of the United States, and then it all starts, new country, and you have wars with France, But you have some big contradiction other than, self-sacrifice and individual rights. You have some big contradiction, political contradiction in the country, which is slavery. That's why I'm not saying it was the United States the whole 19th century. Only after this major problem was, of course, not fully, but a major sort of step forward in eliminating slavery was in the Civil War, right? Civil War was, of course, against all criticisms, against all completely nonsensical objections. The essence of the Civil War was about slavery, North against slave labor in the South, right? So after this period, and there was some period of Reconstruction or how they call it and everything. So this last period, let's say from 1870, let's say until the end of 19th century, that was the period which was not capitalist fully. There was banking regulations already, in that period. They already regulated banks even before they created the biggest evil in banking, which is the destruction of money, which is the Federal Reserve, which controls, what money is, what interest rates and everything, and regulates all banking and everything. Even before it was created in 1913, the whole 19th century American banking system was regulated, not so heavily as in the 20th century, but therefore they had many crises, financial crises in 18th century, when they had almost capitalism. Not Canada. It's interesting. Not in Canada. Canada was relatively, really, very good, free banking system. So that's the first part of the question. This is the period in the United States closest to capitalism, and then of course, establishment of the Federal Reserve, destruction of money, antitrust laws. I haven't spoken about antitrust laws. It's all the anti-monopoly and for perfect competition, to get as much, as closest to the ideal of perfect competition. That's why we have these antitrust laws. Completely wrong, completely immoral, destructive. And the first major, let's say, introduction of these antitrust policies was already in 1890, so-called Sherman Law. Sherman Law, 1890, where antitrust legislation started, and it is responsible for much damage to individuals, to American business. Up until now, you still have antitrust cases in the United States. So United States in history. In the recent history, the country that was closest to capitalism was probably, even if, is it country at all, or was it country? Hong Kong, right? It was country. It used to be, British, sort of, under British, I don't know how to call it, administration, but it was independent actually. And then China took over, right? And then the end of liberty, and we know what's going on in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong was very, 90% of Hong Kong was financial industry, right? It was basically free, really free, small country, 7 million people on just piece of land. Used to be fishing village. In a couple of decades, one of the most prosperous regions in the world, Hong Kong. No longer. Nowadays, who is closest to capitalism? No one. It's all so far. I mean, if you have socialism here, I mean, totalitarianism, destruction of human life, like South Korea, Iran, theocracies, Saudi Arabia, if you have here, and here you have real, genuine capitalism. So United States in the 19th century was somewhere, let's say somewhere here, in the late 19th century. Not full capitalism, but almost. Now we're somewhere, I don't know. Oh, that was the capitalism, that was the totalitarian. So we are somewhere, maybe here. Let's say Western Europe, United States. Let's say developed countries, what we call now mixed economies, the West, somewhere here. Very close to fascism, right? Fascism is not, Nazism. Fascism is something else, as I told you. Fascism is the nominal private ownership, heavily controlled by the government. That's fascism. That's the essence of fascism. So, United States and the rest of the West could now, could be argued that now it's almost fascism, right? And then you have further and further controls, because remember what Hayek said? Many of you are not economists. Friedrich Hayek, this alleged defender of capitalism, he said one important thing in his most famous book, Road to Serfdom. And basically the message was, if you start with some regulations, only few regulations, they create problems. And then the government comes in and say, well, we have to solve these problems, without recognizing that it was the government who created the problems, right? It was the government. Government is the problem, that it intervenes and violates individual rights. So government comes in and say, we have to solve these problems. So we put in another controls, and it's snowballing. So if you have the West somewhere here now, United States and Western Europe, or Japan, of course, Japan, it's the same sort of intellectual, cultural family, right? Western culture, Japan, South Korea. We're slowly moving this way. So pretty. I'm not too optimistic. I'm not too pessimistic, but yeah, that's what I can say. I'm not too optimistic about the future, unless there will be some major change in the culture, and the change ultimately in the culture is not political, as I said. It's the intellectual, right? It's not that people are you hear it everywhere. You cannot change people. You can change people. People change so much if you knew how people behaved and how they thought in ancient Greece, how they thought in year 1000 and everything was completely controlled by Christianity, how they thought what the major cultural trends were in the 18th and 19th century and what they are now. People change because their ideas change. So you can change the culture, but you have to have the right ideas. It's all about ideas. It's all about philosophy. So what we need really is the major intellectual battle. And it has to be led fundamentally, primarily in philosophy. If you don't challenge prevailing philosophy, what is reason, what is reality, what is the good, what is moral, what is the government, if you don't challenge what's taught in the philosophical departments, you're finished. So.